Chad, are you there? Hi, Russ.
Jenny, hi.
Hope more people join us.
Or not.
Or not.
Or maybe that.
Jenny,
Mhm.
do you have do you need the hearings disclosure statement?
No, I always have it.
Okay, good. You may not even need it for, what's the new man's name?
I believe it's Don Frank.
Yeah, you could just wing it if you want.
Well, I read it in October to open the public hearing.
Right,
And therefore, since we're just continuing it, I shouldn't have to reread the whole thing.
agreed.
However, I should still ask questions, I believe.
Ask him, right,
Right.
perfect.
So I guess we get to see the council chambers or something here.
All right, you're home, okay, and Russ is home.
Yeah.
You hear us all right out there in Zoom land?
We were told this meeting was going to be on Zoom, is it not?
Well, we've got it available for both.
Okay, because the stuff at the bottom of the agenda that we received said, oh, it says October commission meeting. It says this will be a Zoom meeting.
Yep, that's what it says.
So I took it that it's going to be a Zoom meeting. Did you?
Well,
It is. For the most
That's what
part.
I understood, but I'm not far away. I can come over there.
I can come over there.
Yeah, well, that's what
If
I'm
you-
doing. I'll see you there.
If you prefer.
Either way,
Yeah,
Well, I'd rather be in person myself.
I would
in the
too.
car.
Is everyone vaccinated over there?
Yeah, I think so.
You
Think we
think
can-
so?
Well, that's a
Yeah.
good question.
Yes. So, it's up to you. We got the meeting starting here in about 2 minutes, but I think what it was is it was supposed to say the same thing as it usually does. Yet with the transitions, it was just, a little blip here. So far, so good. We don't have many people. I gotta go check to see how many people are waiting.
Okay, give me 5 minutes and I'll be there. Okay,
Up to you. We won't start without you.
I know, I've got the book.
Miss Angelina? Hey, David. No problem. Go on. You don't call the 739 number, you call the 888 number. The access code is the 738 number. Yeah. That's okay, we're a little bit, we're gonna be delayed here, so. Perfect. Okay, it's great. Bye.
See where the planning commissioners are.
Hi, Austin. Congratulations.
Hey, thanks, Carol.
Hi, Terry Graff here. Can you hear me?
We hear you.
You,
Good.
You know what year this was, Jeff? I think it was 1977. Somewhere around there. So right now, what I'm doing is I'm letting people into the meeting because of the way we set it up. So each person that comes in, I have to go ahead and do it. Now, normally Christy does this for us, but she's off doing another time, so I'm covering for her. So we'll kind of get that things put together so that that's a little bit more smoothly. And then, not yet, no, we'll work on that down the line. One day, maybe. You know, but I'd like to get more comfortable in here first before throwing another computer to work on. No? Did you have any questions at all, Don?
Not really.
All right.
Second Thursdays?
All the time. Now, most of the time, we didn't have a meeting, the month prior.
Right.
Lack of agenda items, and that'll happen. Or over, over a holiday, that'll happen.
Right.
But yeah, second Thursday.
Okay, well, I got my new calendar. So that's it.
That's gotta be fun.
You have to dig for that? Paper and everything?
I know, right? I love these things, and I still have all of them I've ever had for 20 years, so.
Oh, that's cool.
But it's actually kind of fun to look back.
Yeah, that's cool.
You know.
I got files for all big events. I don't know if I'll go back. So.
Well, were you meeting in person today?
Yeah, nobody seemed to be quite sure. And so Jenny was online and then she got in the car and she's on her way over there. And Russ was online and then he got in his car and he's on his way over there. But you don't have to. If you're comfortable there, don't worry about it.
hello,
So
David.
I could
Smith,
jump
I'm
in
on
the car
phone.
too.
All right, Russ, Don,
It's up to you, Austin.
I didn't know you were gonna be on board, but that's awesome. Yeah, thank you. Yeah. Yeah, of course.
And Terry's on the phone.
Lobby and spend $1,000 or they come get you?
Sharon's on.
Did not spend any money. Oh, okay. So.
Hello, David is on the phone.
Maybe this is more.
Hi, David.
Thanks, Andrew. I think the Daily Historian had a listed as a electronic meeting.
Yeah, well, it is down here as well. You know, it says that it's gonna be a Zoom meeting, but in my mind, it was always set up the way it's always been set up since we've been in COVID, where maybe, you know, if you wanna come in, you come in.
Oh,
It's just what, we got a little hurdle between transition.
I see. So we've got some people still on video, okay?
Yeah. Yeah. And folks that are waiting online, it's gonna be just a little bit for us to get caught up, but we'll get there soon.
Can you guys hear me okay?
I hear you.
Was that Sharon?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, we hear you.
I'm gonna run down there.
I knew you were gonna do that.
See ya.
You could literally run and get there fast.
Doesn't trigger again.
Where's everybody going?
Well, they're going to City Hall, David. There seemed to be a little confusion whether it was Zoom or City Hall. And since they found out they could go to City Hall and some of them were there, they got in their car and went to City Hall.
So what should I do?
You can do whatever you want.
Hey, Colin. Yeah, we had, yesterday was the stag, depending from that aspect. Yeah. It's, the end meeting is that Wednesday. So they always have the December stag, same day as the meeting. And, you know, it was cold, but at least we didn't get rain.
Right, yeah.
I mean, it's pretty good considering. I ended up playing with Kevin Purdy, who doesn't usually play in our group, but he was a filling guy. He started with the desert. Kevin. Okay. So he'd been down there for 2 weeks and he comes back here. But he was rumbling and mumbling and it's too cold. I'm not used to it.
I want to grab that.
I said, this was a day when it doesn't rain. If it doesn't rain and we're trying to golf, it's fine. Okay. So he was mumbling, but you know, it was pretty good day. He was, yeah. Are you getting out?
A little bit, you know, I mean,
Why don't I just make it?
sad weather is a big factor, but yeah, I'm getting out there, but I put my long johns
Where
on.
is
But you guys walk, most of you walk, right?
Yeah, yeah, and that helps me stay warm for sure.
And of course, we all have carbon heaters, so some of the days we play that,
Oh,
you know, we act like we're tough, it's not that tough. You know, we get out and get it and
yeah.
get
Get into the back.
you're over your little Bunsen burner. So,
Still, it's getting out there.
it's good.
Our grade, the yard grades are about 8.5 right now.
Yeah.
I don't know what they are.
Well, they're a little quicker than that, but they come and go, I think.
Oh,
You
yeah.
know, it just depends on whether you get out there ahead of golf and
Right.
roll over or do something.
It was just hard to do when it's so wet.
Yeah. So,
So that's the thing, just trying to,
Be interested in save Carol.
yeah, hard enough to get the ball to the hole, you know?
yeah.
I don't know who's back in the corner. Is that Russ?
I don't know.
Well, now we're gonna get it. Virginia's here.
What makes you say that?
Hey, Austin. How you doing? Good.
Oh, new commissioner.
You know, things happen. What have you been doing? Just laying around?
I guess taking care of a baby.
I knew that.
So did Dave Smith talk to you today?
You did.
So is he coming?
He's on the phone, I believe.
Okay, because he,
just had a meeting.
okay.
Yeah.
I'm over here.
Yeah. Good for you. Yeah, and I don't have anything to do.
That's okay. I've been told you have a horrible cold.
Surprisingly, yeah, me too.
Yes.
Not at all.
That's what I was told
Look
today.
at these rumors. What else have they been saying about me out there?
You don't want to go the rest.
Did you print out the letters for correspondence for the board then?
I did not.
Would you like the copies?
Sure. All right. I'm gonna check this here.
Virginia, did you print out the letters?
Yes. And only my dead mother calls me Virginia.
I'm sorry.
She can do it very often.
Hear what she said.
I.
Select that last one.
Chad, who's spot that I take? Stephanie W. Okay.
Must be Austin.
Okay,
Yeah.
so Sherry,
There's Stephanie, right there.
Is Stephanie resigned or did she her position?
Her position expired, she's not re-up. Yes.
okay, so Dave is on the phone.
David and Terry are on the phone.
Okay. David,
Okay, and Terry Graff is on the phone.
Terry-
Yes, on the, it
Sure.
said in the agenda it's going to be held via Zoom, so that's why I'm,
yeah.
phone.
I know. Okay,
We're making stuff up.
so. Give me just a moment, so the right way because I'm gonna write it down. Because it's on. Okay. It is 6:11. The order of the Gearhart Planning Commission. First off, before we get into our agenda today, we have a new member, Don Frank. Don, would you like to give a very brief introduction of yourself to the rest of the members?
Sure, thanks, Jimmy. My name's Don Frank. I'm a commercial photographer in town. This is my wife and I moved to town 4 years ago, which is my second stint in here. And I put my hat in the ring and somehow I got it. So here we are.
Okay. Anything else you'd like to tell us? But you do understand brief, I got that.
Yeah, I made it No, I look forward to it.
Okay.
I've done my homework and it'll be fun.
Okay, great. And we also have someone new that's taken Cheryl One's place. Would you like to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself?
My name is Angelina Bryan, and I started here a little over a year ago at the building department and just recently transferred over here to integrate planning in with it. So I grew up with construction and businesses with my family, so I enjoy doing this kind of stuff, and I love Gearhart, so
Okay, wait, well, and you pronounce it Angelina?
yes.
Okay, there's a lot of extra letters in there. That's why I was asking. Okay, great. So David, I'm sorry, you don't get a name tag today. So
Sharon will not be.
Sharon's not gonna be here, so just go and take one of those seats.
Don't call me Sharon.
Don't call you Sharon, okay?
Sorry, I'm late, I was waiting for
No.
someone to get here from.
You're not late. We all just walked in. Okay, so, members present, in person are Gideon Taggart Smith and Frank and Tomlinson, and on the phone are Graf and Clifford, right? Sharon's there someplace? Is she?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, okay. All right. So is there someone I'm missing? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Did you say Terry?
I said Terry.
yes, I'm here.
I know, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I don't know, I don't recognize you over there. We're good. Okay, so everyone's here. All right, so we have the consent agenda consisting of the minutes from October 14th, the financial report as of December 1st, and the correspondence has been sent out to us over email. Do we have a motion to accept the consent agenda as presented?
So moved.
Okay, Haggard has moved and
Second.
Sharon, no, Smith has seconded it. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All
Aye.
those opposed say nay. Thank you. All right. Reports, staff.
Chad, I don't have anything in particular tonight.
Okay, and then so I'll just go ahead and do something really quick here. City council met, they did our goal setting session, and the planning commission was a topic of the goal setting session, which I think is really positive. They are looking forward to doing some future planning, and they would like the planning commission to engage in some of those things. We've also got the ELK Declaration of Cooperation that we signed with Oregon Solutions. So those are some items as well that will be coming to the Planning Commission's way when there's time. So I think it'll be an interesting winter and spring. We'll start working on some of those things, but that's up to where you place them on the goals list as well. So it was a great meeting, and I was pleased to see that the two are talking about each other, and the goals are being taken seriously. So they appreciate your folks' goals list. They're familiar with it, and they appreciate also every month talking about it. So we're doing that as well. City Council met with Noah with the Mechanical Watershed Council. Noah is new to the organization, and he's going to be working in this area mostly, in regards to salmon habitat, wetlands and that sort of thing. So it was interesting to meet with him, and the conversation we had is some of the things that are on the goals list for the future of the Planning Commission. And he's got some people that can help us with some of those as the time is right. So the A2 aquatic zone is one of the areas, or riparian zone. So we made some good contacts there, and we look forward to working with Noah. He's been helpful in looking for grants for the city of Gerhart, and city council planning, or the city council kind of steered them and looking at pollinator grants as well. So those are some things that we're working on with him.
Noah, who?
I didn't bring his last name here, but I'll look that up and I'll report that to you here.
I was going like, who are you talking about?
Yeah, he's with the Mechanical Watershed Council.
Okay.
Yeah. And for right now, that's all that I have, other than it is very nice to have Miss Angelina Bryan in the office. We have consolidated 3 positions into 1 full-time position, but what that's going to do for the Planning Commission is it's going to have a person here 5 days a week, 40 hours a week at least, is able to answer our questions and to help us through things and to make things move forward. She's very organized. She's got a lot of skills in office management. She's got a lot of skills in building. She's got a lot of skills in building official office management in particular. And then she's been working closely with me for the last 6 months on zoning issues. So the training's going really well. I'm excited for this. This is kind of a big step for Gerhart, and it's definitely helpful for me. So welcome, Angelina. It's all that I have right now.
Okay.
I have a question before we leave this section of the agenda.
Sure.
Reading through meeting minutes, how important is it that you bring up typos and conflicts of spelling, especially names, those kind of details of it? Because in the minutes, I noticed that this fellow Carrie Johnson?
Say Carl Johnson.
Well, I see him referred to as Carrie and Carl.
It's Carrie.
So is that too nitpicky to make sure that all the Carries are really Carl?
No, I don't think it is. It's part of the record.
In terms of public record, I think the name should be right.
Yeah.
a small typo or hyphen, something like that is not very important, but I would think names should be called out.
Yes, please.
And there are several conflicts on page 2 and 3 of the meeting minutes. And that's all I think I see on that. Otherwise, I didn't see anything that would bring up meeting minute comments. The names I think are important to the record.
Okay, and I think that anything that comes up that's substantial to the conversation or to a hearing is important to keep straight, so don't hesitate prior to consenting to all of that to make some updates. Please.
Yeah.
Thank you for clarifying.
We do read them, so. I know they're pre-recorded, but we do. Okay, thank you, David. Okay, anything for commissioners? Do we have anything today, Russ?
No.
We can turn Sharon's name around, please. Thank you. Okay, Dave, do you have anything? No. Austin? No. Terry?
No,
Sharon?
No,
No. Okay. Huh?
It's unanimous.
It's sense. Donna, do you have anything you'd like to bring up as a commissioner?
Well, I did read the draft of the Parks plan, and I did find a couple typos.
That's a whole nother issue.
Okay, so
This is a time for, if you have, this is a time like when Austin was working on the Parks Master Plan. He would give us an update on what had been going on. So, or there's something, someone's heard about something and has a specific question for either the staff or wanted to make sure that we do it as a planning commission. There's been questions during this time period that come up, for instance, about the Gerard Elementary School and those kind of things. So,
okay.
all right. All right, good enough. Goals list. As you notice on the goals list, there's some things at the bottom. And there's some red and there's some yellow. We have very colorful goals list this time. So the ODOT City Highway 101 Safety Improvement Plan, I'm sure many of you participated in the survey or the workshop. I was in Europe, so I didn't.
There's some good feedback.
There was some good feedback, good. So you're working on that and continuing with it. So it's not really something we're doing. This will eventually come through us, but not right at this time.
Correct, really, they're in the public input section and collecting some of this data. We're also going to be looking at access management, which means, how you get on and off the highway with the business folks prior to getting into some conversations. And so February is when we're going to do that. So looking at probably March to get going in that again. I don't think it'll be at the planning commission quite then, but Carol can update that.
Okay. In the future.
Which Carol's.
Carol's asleep. Yes, Carol.
No, well, I was just gonna say, it doesn't, if you'd like them to come give you an update as we get closer into, finalizing a lot of the details, that's great. They can give you a report. There will be no, I don't think there'll be any amendment process or any application process like with our plans that we are working on. So it's really a highway improvement plan. But if you'd like to get them on an agenda, we can do that.
Okay. I think that we would probably all be interested in just at a later date when things have gelled more, would that be right? That we'd like to just hear a report from them what's going on?
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Okay. All right, down at the bottom, you'll notice at city workshop on 11/30/21, it was important. These goals were shared below. 1, planning department. I don't know if we have much to do with the planning department. Comp plan as vision and goal succession was lost, and that didn't even make any sense to me.
I think these two are both related and I can explain them together.
Okay,
So for both the planning commission and the city council and for city staff, it's taking the comp plan and turning it into an educational moment, whether it be as we're getting involved or, becoming involved in the city, in orientation, a conversation about how the planning, the comprehensive plan really works. And it's just to kind of protect the succession. So as we start rotating through people, we've got lots of experience and touch points with the comp plan so that it's top of mind. So we just want to figure out how to keep that going, spending time with a new commissioner, going over where, all the documents are located, and then the importance of the comp plan as being a filter is one of those parts. And then it's also for, not just for us to keep up on top of things, but also to get the public a real clear understanding of what the comp plan is at your heart, because sometimes they don't even know what that document even exists. And then, you get people that are new into town and they're interested in participating. It would be helpful to celebrate that, whether it be a short video, narrating some of the things that show people what to look at. So it was just the concern that we keep the comp plan top of mind and that we should figure out some ways to do so. Okay.
so do we need to take any action on these two items at the bottom of the list? Or are they just there as reference and reminders?
Well, I think coming up with maybe some ideas in regards to specific goals within that, and then presenting those and seeing if you would want to put them on your priority action list.
Okay.
And I think city staff can get that started.
Okay.
And at least give you the information, give you what I just said in a written format, and then we can go from there. Does that sound all right?
Okay. They say okay?
I have a comment
Okay.
on the goals list.
Yes.
I see that both of the items suggested for upgrading were taken care of on this list. And just to kind of review a little thing for Don, you'll notice the first column in my copy is cut off, but it says item. Okay. So items is not the same as priorities. Item number 1 is everything until you get down to number 2. Item number 2 is everything until you get down to item number 3. So within that item number 1, there's 2 different priorities for 2 different objects in that number 1 item. So that's how we read those.
Gotcha.
And then when I get to the very bottom, I see the new goals requested to be added by the city council. It looks like it's spelling the city attorney. Council should be spelled COUNCIL. At the very
At the
bottom.
bottom, you goes in yellow.
Oh, yeah.
Below the yellow.
Well,
We can find
in
your
the yellow
council.
and below the yellow.
Yeah, we'll fix that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Because we're not talking to the attorney. Again, I'm sorry to be nitpicky, but public record.
It's Thursday. It's good. Anything else?
No.
Okay. All right, so any other comments on the goals list? This is a time where you don't like something, you want to change something, or anything else? Nothing, we will move on. Okay, so, visitors' comments. Do we have any visitors, or do we have any comments? Can you see that, Chad?
Yes, I'm looking for you. Nothing that I see.
Okay. All right. So what we have is a public hearing here. As you remember, we, by motion, in October, we moved it to, continue it January 13th. And then Carol sent out an email asking if anyone had any objections to bringing it in today rather than waiting till January. And no one disagreed, and so she made a decision to have the reopening of the public hearing today. So I'm going to reopen the public hearing on 21-4 CP.ZTA, continuation of the public hearing for the draft Parks and Open Space Master Plan. To Commissioner Frank, when we have a hearing, I have a statement I read. And they've heard me read it for a long time, and it's generally has to do with asking the public if they believe that we can have this hearing and talking about the different rules that apply to hearing. And if you don't, for instance, if someone does not make a comment during the hearing or sends correspondence and they don't like the decision, they can't necessarily be a part of the appeal. So there's different rules that we have to follow. These are state rules. But one of the things I asked them down at the bottom is if a commissioner has a conflict of interest, an ex parte contact, or a personal bias. So I have to ask you that about this public hearing. Do you have a conflict of interest, an ex parte contact, or personal bias?
No,
No. Okay. And do you understand what I'm asking?
yes.
Okay. That'd be a good thing too, wouldn't it? So we have an updated.
Yeah.
And it's shorter, there's fewer pages. We have an updated draft from what we had in October. There have been some pages added, as Carol said, in red. There are some comments. And yes, Don, there are typos. There are even sentences that just end in the middle of nowhere, and I don't know what they mean. But at any rate, Carol, would you like to say something at this time?
Okay, sure. I'll try and help you get back into this topic and find out what your concerns and issues are with the current draft. And the draft we have is 12/2/21. First of all, I'll just go ahead, as this is a hearing, I'll mention that we had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 public comments that I think you've seen them all, from John Dudley, Brian Finnerty, Jeff Strange, Claire McIntyre, and Jeannie and Wilson Mark. You should have gotten those yesterday and today. Those are, as far as I know, the only public comments for this meeting tonight about the plan. And we can go through those as you like. The nice thing is most of them were quite friendly and complimentary and helpful. As you know, this is a rough draft still. There definitely are typos. We've just been kind of moving things around, trying to get it in a better format. But anyway, we can come back to those letters if you like. I'll just go a little bit longer in general here for a minute. I wanted to remind you that the city staff report you had in October, gave you all the comprehensive plan analysis as far as the consistency of this park plan with our comprehensive plan. And I don't feel there's any need to talk about findings tonight because it's so supportive. They're so supportive of each other. There really were no conflicts in the comprehensive plan and its policies, I don't think, with this parks master plan. And so I'm putting those aside for now until we get to a point of making some kind of a recommendation to council. Maybe that's tonight, maybe it's next month, but the findings are still intact. And then I would say in general that, based on the comments we received and the Planning Commission's comments last time, the draft has been simplified. I think it's been better organized. It's been refined. It's more succinct. And it's, I think, presented in a way that's just more straightforward and usable. It's still pretty long because the appendix adds about doubles the size. And tonight, I think, as I mentioned in my comments to you when the packet went out, or I think maybe Angelina did, to focus on the policies would be our goal tonight, to really, you know, the comments and the criticism or the corrections or anything. It's great if there's some inventory questions or errors, but the policies are what we will be living with from now until it's adopted, until as we start to use it as our guiding principles for our parks. And they're the most important. As you know, it's all the policies. The policies of the comprehensive plan we keep coming back to because they are the core of your work. And the transportation plan policies and projects, we will always keep coming back to try and adhere to those policies. And here we are again with a new plan that has 19 policies in it. So that being said, I'm going to just try, and I think if it's okay with you, I'm going to walk through and speed through part of this and then come back to you and hear what you have to say, as well as the public. So we have an introduction, easy, page 3, contents and organization, page 4. Section 2 is inventory of our existing parks, and both city and private. So we have a lot of inventory data that's generally followed by whatever improvements are in those specific inventoried parks. To tell you what it is, first one being the dunes west of Ocean Avenue, for instance, and the northern edge of the Nicanacan River Estuary or Little Beach. And there's a list of all the accesses, for instance, to the beach, and then improvements. And that's, you know, that's the theme here through the policy section. Then you go on to page 6, and for example, Leslie Miller Dunes Meadow Park, we start to get some notes that are added. Let's see, we're still in the inventory though. And the notes are, I have to remember to give credit to the author here and the advisory committee who put this incredibly detailed plan together, all volunteer. And George really single-handedly wrote it. I'm sorry he's not here tonight. I know he's pretty tied up in several things, but he had the style of adding the notes and historical notes and all kinds of informational notes with each of the relevant parks that he thought needed some explanation. And, it's kind of a different approach. The one idea I have is on, for instance, page 6, is do we want to put some of this history in a different place? It's really good to have, because he spent a lot of time at the Historical Society and other places getting these notes and learning. Maybe it's in an appendix. So that's a question I have, and I will leave it at that for now. We're still talking then in this portion, section 2 of our existing parks. We got Leslie Miller, we have Trails End Park, we have the Ridge Path on page 7, and then a bunch of notes there and improvements. Then we have Ladderette Garden at Cottage and E, 10th Street, a city-owned parcel that could in the future be a park on G and Neocoxie Creek, and a pedestrian bike trail, a very short one there on Summit to Pfeiffer that connects those two streets. Some other pedestrian bicycle trails on page 8, and I had a question right there. Can somebody tell me number 2A10, is the 13th Street beach access public or private? Anybody know?
David Workman?
Yeah, no, 13th Street is an easement. But the particular area that the trail that goes up over the dune, I believe is private, but I can check here in just a couple seconds here for you.
Okay. You don't, we'll keep going, but that's the question I had. And then we, with Austin's input, we added that Thompson Creek Forest Lands up on Lewis and Clark Road, city owned, I believe. No,
Yeah.
yes. And it's adjacent to some North Coast Land Conservancy land and a tree farm, Stimson Lumber, various owners up there, but you know, it's just an interesting kind of outlier that's good to get on this list with no any known future at this point. Maybe you have some ideas. And so then still in the inventory here, we've got the other publicly owned properties, the beaches and dunes west of the ocean front, South Ocean, Neocoxie Creek. We have the full set of pedestrian network plans for trails and bike paths in the transportation plan, and there are a lot of them, which we will continue to keep coming back to whenever we review new development. And then the larger coast, Northwest Oregon and Trans-American bikeways. Okay, and then you go to section 2C, and these are the privately owned properties in public or shared private public use, like the golf courses, the dunes, the reserve has a park, Gerhardt Meadows LLC has a park, Sons of Norway, Pine Ridge, Shamrock Pines, Riparian Buffer, Butterfly Reserve,
Specifics.
and the beach access trail in the Highlands. The North Coast Land Conservancy is a really a big complementary asset to the city, and they're nearby properties that will be, I guess, publicly owned, not necessarily developed, but there's going to be a good relationship, I think, collaborative relationship with them in the future. And I hope we can find ways to connect our parks with their parks via trails. And the last item there, if you're with me on page 11, is the property that was formerly the school.
We're getting to us.
And my thought on that one is it shouldn't be in there. You know, this is just describing that it's 8.5 acres. It was owned by the school district, and the school, Gerhardt Elementary School, sold. Current owner has ideas about the future and desires to develop and maybe some parkland, but to me, it's out of the system now. It is zoned park, no, it's zoned public, semi-public. And the minute, I don't know, we put this in here, it just becomes dated and irrelevant, I think, to this plan. Whatever happens in the future, that's to be seen, and it's not planned to be a park. So I don't, unless you talk me out of it, think it needs to be in there.
Carol, this is Terry. The heading, it says other privately owned properties potentially relevant to parks planning. It seems like this is potentially relevant to parks planning.
That's a good point.
And some public and semi-public, so in reality, it's still able to be a part of that public policy planning, so.
Okay, I just, maybe, all right, I see what you're saying. It may be, but I guess there's a lot of other properties that may be.
Well, you're saying potentially relevant to parks planning. If it's potentially any property that is privately owned, which is potentially relevant, should be in here, and this one in particular.
And so what about others? I mean,
well, I guess I don't know what other ones would. This guy is already talking about making part of it a park. And I assume that be,
Oh, she's here.
if he gets his commercial, then we get the park. And that seems like that's relevant to parks planning.
It's fine with me. Let's just leave it where it is. And it'd be a process of more conversation here with council
Okay.
and you and leave it where it is then. Fine,
Okay.
good. Appreciate the feedback.
We need to be real specific.
Okay, and now in section 3, we are where I was hoping we could focus tonight, and that's on the policies.
John, this is us.
And I hate to ask you this, but would you mind muting John until I finish talking? Because I
Okay.
get confused about who's talking. Thank you. Thank you. And okay. There are 19 policies. There are some notes. I think some of the notes are redundant and could be shortened up. And I can go through these policies, but maybe I think I'd like to first ask you as a group how you'd like to approach this. Like, can we just, I can also mention what the citizens' comments were and where those land in these policies. So does anybody have any preference on how we go about this?
I do. You walked us through all of this 2 months ago,
Right?
right? And so Don says he's read it. And we've certainly probably all reviewed it again. So I personally would like us to focus on those areas where we have concerns or specific questions. And that's what I would like to do.
I agree. This is Terry. I think that's the way we should approach it.
I agree also.
Well, one of the things, I think there's a lot of redundant things in here that just kind of are repeating it, and they kind of, the main thing, a heavy document, I'll just refer to 3.1 that we're talking about policies. We say, the first paragraph says what we want to do.
Right.
Notes 1 and 2 don't do anything for me.
Russ, I completely agree. I went back and forth with this with George when we were going through the process of putting this together. And I every time I brought up one of the notes, I think the note should be as an appendix to the actual policies, because they are redundant in some sense, but also should be a clean document in my eyes, where you should be able to read the policy, explain everything. If you want to read back the notes based on how we came up with the decision on these policies, you can do that. But I think the notes should be a part of an appendix.
Yeah, to me, I've kind of made notes throughout this document where that same circumstance appears, and that's kind of my general comment to what we're doing. Yeah.
Okay. David, I'm certainly there also to move the notes out from in the body of the policies to an appendix where they should be. So if you want more background.
Exactly.
David, you agree?
I'm on board.
That sounds great.
Okay, Sharon?
I think that would make for a cleaner document. I agree.
Okay. Didn't hear that one.
Great.
Okay. Anything else, Russ?
Well, I guess, I think though that basic premise is driving a lot of red ink, and going through this, I don't have any other specifics.
Okay.
That I think it would be, whether Carol can go back through it and respond to the input we're providing, say XXXX, and then we have a cleaner document. But obviously we want to keep on going tonight. The other thing I guess I'll say, unless I'm jumping the gun, and I guess it speaks to the Parks Commission itself, whether that's an appropriate body to add to the city government, which I don't necessarily think that it is. I definitely think that the Parks Commission should not be a body that has financial control of anything. If we have a citizens body that says, hey, here we are, the Parks Commission, we're looking for new dirt, or how to take care of the dirt that we currently have, I say maybe that's all right, but for us to say, we're gonna hire Charlie the landscaper to clear this out and pay him $5,000, I don't think that's appropriate within our city's organizational chart.
Yes, Russ, I made the same comments in October that
Okay.
I did not understand why we would have a parks committee or that would have this financial wherewithal to be spending money. That was kind of, it doesn't work that way, but, so yes, I'm in agreement with you. Let's move on. Terry, I thought I heard you wanted to say something.
Yeah, I have a question, and it's the new number policy 19, and it's 19C. I have no idea what a riparian zone is, why it was put in here, why we need it, how that affects the property. Is this something that the original committee had discussed? So if you could explain first, what is a riparian zone? What restrictions does that put on the property where the zone is, and why do we need it?
Okay, can I
And
help?
why is it here?
Yeah, can I help with that? In the earlier work sessions, Commissioner Klopfer suggested there be some element to this plan that is cloaking the whole set of parks, that city-owned parks, in some environmental integrity aspect to it. And she wrote this, you jump all over me, Sharon, I'll let you talk as soon as I introduce you. She wrote the policy 19 with some help from me for mainly organization. But again, we have riparian standards. So riparian is basically associated with wildlife, waterways, and vegetation where they meet. And I guess a riparian area would be along the creeks, and in the estuary area, we have plenty of comp plan discussion about riparian and in our zoning code protection, primarily the vegetation and so on. So Sharon, do you want to step in here?
Sure. I think that it's important to look through the comp plan and to see all the references to riparian zone, wildlife and vegetation protection, especially in the riparian zone. We have, it seems like as a city, we have fallen down on the estuary riparian zone references in the comp plan. We've been mostly good about the Neocoxy riparian zone. And we do have that specifically stated in our ordinances. We don't have a specific statement, very clear statement in our ordinances about the estuary riparian zone. There's an allusion to it, but there are numerous references in the comp plan, and I think that needs to be rectified.
And Sharon, let me clarify, you're still talking about city-owned park, public park lands, or are you talking about, so all riparian, in addition to all riparian areas in the city?
Time out, primarily city-owned, where the city of Gerhart Park meets the estuary.
Exactly.
There is, and I know that the Little Beach residents are not going to be happy about this. There already is riparian zone references in the R1 zone that have not been enforced, basically. And I don't know what to do about that. I don't even think I have the wherewithal to weigh in about what should be done about that. I just, I don't know if we would grandfather in something, or I don't even know how that would be handled. I'm just not that experienced in that. But I'm mainly referring to where the park, City Owned Park meets the estuary.
The city park, and it stops at Wellington.
Correct.
Right, and so now I'm gonna segue into the comments, because on policy 3, let's go back, because these correlate. Policy 3 is beaches, dunes, and estuary to be preserved in undeveloped state. And John Dudley, Brian Fennerty, Jeff Strange, and Claire McIntyre agreed with them, I think is what her gist was. That the wording in policy 3 is okay for the city-owned land, but it's not intended to cover the private properties. And so let me see if I can get this right. And we'll come back to 19, Sharon, if you like, and everybody else, but this is a good way to segue into the public comments. I'm just going to read this out loud. So the city policy, the city will manage all city-owned property within the dunes west of Ocean Avenue and along the Mechanicsum River estuary so as to maintain such property in its undeveloped state. Now, this rubs wrong, I think, with the private property owners as compared to what Sharon just said, should it stop at the city park lands easternmost boundary there at Wellington. And here it goes on to say, also to the maximum extent permissible under applicable law, the city will resist any effort by any other public or private property owner. I think that's the key that these comments were focusing on, and John can tell us if that's right, to further develop any property not owned by the city that is located west of the oceanfront building line. Now, this is confusing. Every time I read it, I read something different here, because that's west of the oceanfront building line and would not affect the Mechanicsum estuary, as described in the zoning ordinance, or along the shoreline of the Mechanicsum River estuary. That's what I've got underlined 3 times. I think it's one thing to be talking about what goes on west of the dunes and west of the oceanfront building line in the dunes on the beach, compared to all along the shoreline of the Mechanicsum River estuary, where it says it will resist any effort by any public or private property owner to further develop any property. Well, that is not, I don't know if that's what this committee intended, or if George contended that, but it seems to impinge on private property rights. Any comments from anybody?
Well, this is Terry again, and I'm not really sure I got the answer I'm looking for. And I guess then what I do is look at policy number 4 that says, while considering and balancing various sometimes competing public interests, including C, preservation of scenic views from within the dunes and from neighboring properties. Now, is this riparian zone in conflict with policy 4C? What restrictions are being put on by declaring this a riparian zone? And why is that necessary? That's what I need to know.
The policy doesn't refer anything to riparian zone, okay? Number 3.
Is what? Say that again?
There's no reference to a riparian zone in policy 3.
No, it says the estuary, and then you go to back to the other policy where it does say riparian, that's 19. And riparian is defined. I mean, we don't have any zoning called riparian, except we have a lot of policies in the comp plan about the estuary and reference to riparian. So it's primarily the estuary and Neocoxie Creek, and there's another creek, Mill Creek, that are.
So why do you need to declare this a riparian zone? What is that doing that's not already there? What restrictions is that putting on the property owners along in Little Beach that aren't there? What does that add?
You're talking about 19, right?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
You're saying this is a riparian zone, and a riparian zone must be put there for a reason. And I'm guessing the reason is to put restrictions on that property when it comes to the vegetation. So will a person be able to handle his trees, and maintain the views, or will that be eliminated by declaring it a riparian zone?
Riparian zone, you can't declare a riparian zone unless it's. You have to determine a riparian zone based on the mean high water line, and there's a definition in the comp plan that defines that. So in number 19, the only thing they're referring to is a riparian zone from the A2 on city-owned park area. So it doesn't really affect anything on the private parcels.
Okay, if you have a person on Little Beach and he has a house, and then in front of his house on the city property are pine trees, would he be able to handle those pine trees to protect his view?
They're on city property.
Pardon?
You just said.
But
it's
right
on
now,
city
can you
property.
get a permit to do that?
It's on city property, so you would have to abide by what the city says.
So currently, yes, somebody could ask the city, this is Chad. They could ask the city for a permit to access those trees and thin them out, cut them down depending on what type of tree it is through our current ordinance for vegetation management. And they can thin those trees so that there are viewscapes. They can top certain trees, for vertical trimming, so that the pine trees themselves are low enough so people can see. Spruce trees are different. We can't top or vertically trim those. We can thin them out a little bit. In a riparian zone, removal of trees currently is in our riparian zone on the Neocoxy. You're not able to do that. So I think that would apply to the A2 zone. You are able to trim vegetation in the riparian zone. You just can't rip it out necessarily. And you can try, remove noxious weeds to replant some native things. It's to keep that Neocoxy healthy. Dead or dangerous trees can be removed from those areas as well. So I think that there could be trimming done. People are allowed to trim their trees in the riparian zone next to the Neocoxy. So that would go along here. The riparian zone is spelled out in the zone code. I was just looking it up to read through it, but that's the gist of it.
But the city only owns from Wellington around through the mountain river to the beachfront, correct? Everything east of Wellington there's no city park.
Yeah.
Right.
Correct.
And I don't think the Little Beach people have a concern about number 19. I think they're talking about policy
Number 3.
Number 3.
Three is the one they
Three is the one that specifically referencing, and I looked in, I went this over through my mind multiple times, and the R1 which the majority of their property is on, has a riparian setback of 50 feet, and that's based on the mean high water line. A lot of the property does not meet that specification currently because they do have some riprap and it clears some vegetation. And so I don't know what we can do to remediate that, but that's currently the policy. So anything that they do now is based on that current 50-foot setback in the R1. I think what the policy number 3 was to address was the A2 and anything that could happen inside the estuary. So there's Clatsop County property, there's city property, there's random Sunset LLC property in the middle of the estuary. And this gives the city the ability to put effort against any public or private property leases or anything that goes on in the estuary that can detrimentally affect the estuary itself. I think that's a good policy to have. I think that, I know the owners are a little bit skeptical of this because it might seem like it impedes on their property rights because it does go into the A2 zone. But I think a majority of them wouldn't want to see any development go on in the estuary. And so I think this policy helps conserve that, because if they do decide to sell, who knows what the next person's gonna do? And if they have the opportunity to do that, then they can, because if anything with wetlands and estuaries or conservation, you can do pretty much whatever you want as long as you have money and time. And so if somebody comes in there and buys out one of these people and they have enough money and enough time to do it, they can get approval to put a giant dock that goes straight out in the estuary, private dock for the boats or whatever they want. So I think that was the intent of this policy, but I don't know, I think we could kind of go from there. But, and I know that the oceanfront building line was a majority of that, and then the estuary was kind of a side cast that kind of encompassed the entire thing, so.
Well, I guess just the practical aspect for me, there's essentially a line of riprap through most of the houses and little beach that are sitting below, sitting down at water level. So I guess as a homeowner, I would say, if I need to, if we have a big high tide and the riprap washes out, and I want to re-riprap, are we adding another layer of, you know, and now you, besides going to just the county, now you go to the city's, you know, riparian zone. I mean, one more level of regulation to step through. And that's what I would prefer not to have happen, just as a private property person.
Right, well, they're gonna go through a lot of loopholes just to get any riprap in there anyway, so. I think this doesn't say anything about, like, this is further development of the property, it doesn't say anything about riprap or maintaining anything. So I think the whole point of it was to kind of discourage anything that would be permanent, like, you know, extending that, you know, somebody could come, technically, they could go in and fill in that estuary and build another house. You know, that's like, I think what the intent of it was. But, you know, any riprap, and I think the riparian setback rule, I can't remember exactly, but it might reference something about riprap in there, but, and specifically in the A2 zone, but yeah, I don't know. That's.
Well, recently there's been plenty of talk about king tides, and that makes me have a question. What do you think about describing a climatological condition of such consequence that it moves or removes riprap? Wouldn't that be an extraordinary condition?
Well, it probably would, but
And affecting a lot of the other portions of the city besides just that riprap?
well, it wouldn't necessarily affect the rest of the city. You could just have high water with, you know, with surges and logs come in and break, and, you know, knock some rocks out of position. You're not saying I want to re-riprap the whole thing, but you've had a riprap level that's the height of this table for 10 years, and then you have the conditions we're describing. And all of a sudden you've got 2 or 3 holes in your 50-foot frontage that are down to the ground level. Say, well, I want to put rocks back in there to maintain this protection that I've always had. So that's the practical aspect. And, you know, just historically, I don't know if you were all around here when the Mechanicum left, you know, entered the ocean down about 15th Street in Seaside, like 15 years ago. And so it came out, it went right down the front of those houses that are on the ocean front, on the north end of the Seaside, and essentially washed as close as this, you know, here's the water here, here's the front of the house. Well, those people were going in and having riprap put in, you know, like, you know, daily to try to make it so their house wouldn't go over. So they were not, either they went to the city of Seaside and said, we're doing this. And then essentially the river meandered and went out, essentially the current outlet. But you know, the things that happen with waterways are can basically force you to respond now, not respond after you've gone through 2 months of permits and all that kind of stuff.
Sure, yeah. Unfortunately, it's very difficult to get those permits. I mean, you can't, just to see the water plant in Seaside, that, you know, where the river was cutting in near the wastewater treatment facility.
Yeah.
They had that design and that permitting process was so extensive that is any private landowner that would just own the house would never be able to get through that process without spending hundreds of thousands of dollars just on the permitting and the design itself.
No, I understand what you're saying, but I just remember going over there and looking, and people were dumping rock, having rock dumped.
Right.
And
Was that
so,
Was that
so,
the 80s?
you know, sue me,
Yeah.
you know, sue me for breaking the rules. I'm gonna protect my property.
Yeah.
But I understand what you're saying. I mean, that, you know, there's the two ends of the,
Right.
you know, the official, and then there's save me.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's redundant. That's historical
Right.
digression.
Also, yeah. it's also
To
risk
make
of living next to the river.
If I can bring this home, I think Jeff Strange is on the video tonight. Is a perfect example of your code right now, without anything to do with this park plan, requires anybody in that A2 zone on the waterfront, if they need riprap, they have to come to the planning commission and get a conditional use permit. They have to get a biologist to determine high mean water mark. And a structural change, it's really pretty restrictive compared to other places. It's just that we haven't ever used it. It's been there I think it's been in the code since the 70s, but it either wasn't enforced or maybe that certain situation hasn't happened yet. I don't know. We have it now. So back to policy 3. I guess now, as you understand, and Jenny, tell me when to cut me off and let the public talk as well, but
Okay, I've forgotten that part, Carol. Okay, so we've gone through, we've talked specifically about policy 3 that we have problems with, policy 19 that we have problems with, and the policy number, what one was it? With the
policy 3.
12. Policy 12 with the paid, or with the Parks Commission.
Yeah.
Having wherewithal to hire Joe the landscaper. Are there other sections specifically?
Is this our last chance to talk about?
No. This is, we still have to do public comment. We've got a long ways to go. Just wanted to know if there were specific areas that we wanted Carol to address before we go to public comment.
Let me just give you a couple more highlights that I think will bring some more conversation. The policy 3.4, vegetation in the dunes to be managed as allowed under the zoning ordinance. Item B, environmental protection and preservation of the snowy plover and other wildlife habitat. I was informed by Chad that the Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife removed protection of the snowy plover in the Gearhart area and mitigated that area elsewhere because there's just too much public human activity out there to manage it. And so that's technically speaking, we could take that out of the snowy plover. And another one is 3.6, tennis, pickleball, basketball courts to be maintained as presently operated. Presently, anytime there's a time and date, it bugs me because what is presently going to mean 10 years from now? But anyway, it says on the third line, maintaining the pickleball tennis as currently arranged. There's already interest by pickleball players to add more pickleball courts and thus generate the debate about how many there should be for tennis and how many there should be for pickleball. And this would limit that discussion by saying you have to leave it as currently arranged. And then one more I've got, I think, jumping out at me, and that's the page 15 in the middle of the page, right above the word note. It says, in light of the intended uses for this park being Trails End, the city will require that pet owners keep their dogs leashed at all times while in this park. And the Chad informed me that the prior city manager in his era, there was a referendum that there will not, and still stands, there's a no leash law in effect, I believe now. So we would have to talk about or deal with that. And right under there.
Say that again.
Right now, well, in the 70s or 80s, under the prior city management, a referendum was passed that.
There is no leash law.
Right.
Right, okay.
But they banned a no leash law?
So what happens, our current leash law is that your dog must be under command.
Yeah.
And dog must not be just loose and wandering around, as some dogs do around here. So there was a period of time, and I think it was actually maybe in the 90s, where the city council or the planning commission decided to try to implement a leash law. They put it in an ordinance. That ordinance then was brought through went to a vote with the city, and it failed miserably. So they repealed that and kept the leash law the way it was. So at that time, people in Deerheart were very much wanting to keep the leash law as it was.
But then, yeah, how does that stop you from, I mean, I don't want a leash law at all. That's why it's just in this one little spot. And a lot of people in the Parks Commission felt the same way. So you can't just designate an area that's just leashes.
I think that through policy, the city can probably, in a specific area, not allow dogs to be off leash for a specific reason.
Yeah.
And that's part of the policy. I think that the point was that this was saying, in this particular area, that's what we're going to do.
Yeah.
Without, there's been feedback, of course, but without the general public feedback.
Is that because there is potentially gonna be playground equipment there and children running around?
That was the idea behind it being a central park for the city, and there'd be kids running around, so that would just be one place, because there was a lot of public comment about it in the public survey. And so we thought that was a good, compromise to have this one designated area as a leashed area. You take your dog and your kids to.
For safety.
For safety.
What else, Carol?
One more thing right under that is the note about the Trails End Park, because in this case, we're still in the Trails End Park. And it says that the name should be decided upon either Trails End Park, Central City Park, which is referenced in the comp plan, and Centennial Park, which was a recent naming of the park. And it goes on to say in the last sentence, to reduce confusion, the new Public Deerheart Parks Commission should formally adopt an official and definitive name. This is just minutia, but really the city council should do that, particularly if there is not going to be a Parks Commission formed from this plan. So that's easy to fix. And I'm going to just keep going where I have my little notes. Right under there, 3.8. Ridge path to be restored and made usable. I thought these words about promptly and diligently were a little excessive, like the city wasn't maintaining it very well and they need to do it right now. But then also we had a question about D, to place signage at key points to advise the public regarding the history of the path and restrictions on its use, quotation, foot traffic only. there's questions about bicycles, which have really always been able to go back and forth on the ridge path. And I know some people have had problems with that, but generally, I think there's some sense that maybe it's too restrictive to say no bicycles on the ridge path, so.
The issue that has evolved there, Carol, is now there are bicycles with motors on.
Oh, true.
Electric motors, so you won't hear them coming. And I would think that a typical motorized bicycle would declare themselves having the right of way on an improved path like that. There's a lot of conflict there with non-foot traffic. And it's probably gonna get worse, probably motorized skateboards.
Well, the Timberlands has basically prohibited e-bikes.
Yeah.
So it's quite possible for e-bikes. You could say motorized,
Motorbikes, motorized.
anything, however you want to phrase it, so that you would still have the kid pedaling along his bike.
Yeah.
Or walking, because that's not what you're talking about, right? You're talking about the
Correct.
e-bikes. All right, and you can do that.
Okay, and I'll let you open this up to everybody else. I think that's about it. Unless we do need to come back to 19 and understand what you want to do with that concept, that whole topic.
On 19, page 22, the second sentence, it says the only what?
Yeah, I just found that too. That's my fault. Sharon, do you have your copy handy? The only,
Yeah, I think it's supposed to be and only.
yeah. Only to allow paths to remain passable. I think that's right.
What?
That's
Okay,
part of
what's it
the,
supposed to read?
change the to and.
Well, then it's an incomplete sentence,
I know. Let's see.
and those bother me,
And only to allow paths to remain passable.
the only two.
I have a couple things on 19, but just for clarification for the public comment, is from what the way I read it, it sounds like it refers to all city-owned public parks, but then the note above it says only applies to the oceanfront dunes and estuaries. So I wanted to make sure that's clear before we discuss that, if there's a public comment on it.
Yeah, I think my note was wrong. I think that Sharon, it was intended to be for all city parks, not just in the oceanfront dunes and estuary, or as subject to beaches and dunes overlay zone. I think that was the error there.
Because the policy says maintain environmental integrity in city-owned public parks.
Yeah,
The note above says this is only applies to city-owned parks and ocean dunes, and then in the first paragraph, it says there are 3 areas of the oceanfront dunes that are zone park and open space. So I want to be clear on what this
take the note
policy.
out. I think you just removed the note, because it was just a note anyway. It only added confusion.
And the last paragraph, and the last sentence of the first paragraph.
Any such, what? A, B?
There, the first paragraph of policy number 19.
There are 3 areas in the oceanfront dunes that are zoned for park and open space and owned and maintained by the city?
Yeah,
What was your
Is it-
question?
if this policy is just for city-owned public parks, why does that sentence have to be there? It's referring to all public parks.
I can't think of a reason.
Yeah, maybe it was to clarify, yeah, no reason.
Okay. All right, are we finished finished with this segment, Carol?
You're finished with me for now.
I'm finished with you, okay. Thank you. So now we will move on to, because remember, we continued the public hearing. So, I would like to know if there are any proponents that would like to speak about this Parks Master Plan. And Chad will check and see if there's anyone.
We've only got about 12 or so people on, so.
Okay, so are there opponents? Now, that's where you gotta.
Yes.
All right, so I don't know who said yes, but whoever you are, please give your full name and your mailing address so that we can get it for our records. We will give you 5 minutes to speak and speak to the plan, please.
John
Okay,
Dudley, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
John Dudley, PO Box 2373, Gearhart. And our physical address, do you want that? 924 Little Beach Drive. You have that?
Yes. Thank you.
I wrote a letter, and so far it has not been clear to me that the Planning Commission has addressed the thrust of my letter, which is that this is a parks plan addressing everything within the park zone. And that's my understanding. And yet there's language in the parks plan which gives the impression that the shoreline outside of the parks plan, that is west of the park zone near Hager to the Neocoxie Creek, is under the jurisdictional management of park policy. And it's not clear to me that the commission has made any resolution of that issue, that is removing that specific language. And it is in section 3,
Yeah.
3.3 policy number 3, and is also referred to in section 4 under existing parks capital improvement plan. And the existing park is specified as the dunes west of Ocean Avenue connecting to Nicanicum Estuary and Neocoxie Creek. That's incorrect.
That is incorrect. I'm sorry to jump in, Mrs. Chair. I just wanted to agree with him that I didn't turn the page all the way to section 4, but and Neocoxie Creek on section 4, that capital improvement plan was not intended to be connecting to the ocean dunes in this specific place. It's not an existing park.
That's correct. That's the primary thrust of my objection. I have some other concerns, but I don't elect to voice them at this moment.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Dudley.
Yes.
Carol, will you please restate what you just said?
Okay, if you turn to section 4, page 24, there's
page 24.
Yeah, it's in, there's the 3 tables that back there that talk about park planning, capital planning,
Yes.
proposed park. So the existing parks has a number of categories there, and the first one says existing park, dunes, this is the dunes, the parkland that's out in the dunes, zoned park, west of Ocean Avenue, connecting to the Nicanicum Estuary, and erroneously adds and Neocoxie Creek. That was my fault. It doesn't connect all the way to the creek. It just stops at Wellington. So I would agree to remove those last three words in that table for clarity.
Okay. All right, someone else that would like to speak?
Hi, Jeff Strange here.
Okay, Jeff, if you would please state your address?
I believe that the address we need here is the office is 2125 Northeast 48th Street in Portland, 97213, yeah. And it's in relation to our to the lodge at 715 H Street there. I think I agree with the Dudleys. I think we saw the same aspect of this plan as being problematic. I think the parks plan is being used to change policy in zones outside of the parks, particularly A2 and R1. And that if we want to do anything, if there are concerns that the A2 and somehow is not rigorous enough of a process to develop anything in that zone, that the correct response, the best response would be to amend the A2 zone or the R1 zone to speak to those particular concerns, that we shouldn't be using the parks plan to legislate activities in these other zones. I think, and I just asked that what I not eloquent enough to speak ex parte here in better than I can put in the letter I addressed here about the rationale for that. But I don't see a different way to address this readily without the recommendation that I'm making here, that we let me just go ahead and read it from the letter, that all reference to within policy number 3, and that's explicitly to new restrictions on privately held property along the shoreline of the Nicanicum be deleted from the parks plan. I think it's just a few clauses that seem to have been sprinkled in there at the end, where, you know, concerns about the parks plan itself were extrapolated to deal with these other zones. And so my particular proposal is written there at the end of the letter. And so I just wanted to get on record that that's my proposal, that how we deal with this issue of, yeah. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Is there anyone else? Is there anyone else that would like to speak opposed to this?
Stephanie,
That's-
raise your hand.
Oh, Stephanie, okay.
Yes, hello, everybody.
Hi. Name and address?
Stephanie Dudley, 924 Little Beach Drive, PO Box 2373, Deerheart. And I'm going to be extremely specific. In section 3.3, in the very first sentence, I would like to see the words "and along the Nicanicum River estuary" modified or eliminated. And at the very end, where it says described in the city zoning ordinance or along the shoreline of the Nicanicum River estuary, because the shoreline of the Nicanicum River estuary from Wellington or Hager to Neocoxie Creek is not part of the park zone. And I think that is a lot of what our neighbor Jeff Strange is saying. And I think that my husband, John Dudley, said it much nicer than I did. But that is succinctly what I would really like to see. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Stephanie.
Can I just ask you one more time, Stephanie, how you ended that? Starting, I got the first part, along the Nicanicum River estuary, and the second part was the last sentence, not starting with "not owned by the city" all the way to the end.
No, the very last part, or along the shoreline of the Nicanicum River.
Okay, got it.
The rest of it's great. And I really want to compliment the Parks Commission or Parks Committee, because I think they did a tremendous amount of work. And I think much of it is really, really good. It's just this particular piece that affects us personally. And now that I'm not sitting with you guys, I can sit on this side.
Sorry.
Lucky me, thanks.
Thank you. Is there anyone else? Okay, is there anyone, oh, did you, somebody else check? You okay? Is there anyone that would like to make a neutral comment? Nothing, Chad?
I'd just like to say that I,
Oh, Deb, you had your time.
oh, sorry, apologies.
Yes, we have your letter, and I think it clearly states what you would like to say. Is that correct?
It does. I just want to reiterate the compliments that the Dudleys are giving concerning the plan as a whole. It's a marvelous set of things being introduced here, and this is just one small aspect of it. Thanks so much.
Okay, we'll take the compliments. Thank you. All right, so I am going to now close the public hearing. That means the public all out there. And now is our time to discuss what do we want to do tonight? Are there things we specifically want to say to Carol need to be dropped, need to be changed, wording needs to be changed? We know, Don, there are still grammatical errors. If the grammatical errors change the meaning and they're more commas and periods and syntax, we'll let Carol continue to work on that. I know, Carol, the park in the reserve is owned by the reserve at Gerhardt HOA. Gerhardt Investments LLC went away a long time ago. Please correct that.
Wait, what page? What page? Help me here.
On your private parks,
Yeah,
the reserve at Gerhardt. Page 10.
oh, I was on 11. Okay, reserve, got it. Privately owned Gerhardt Investments LLC.
It's long gone.
Okay,
It's privately owned by the reserve at Gerhardt HOA. Period.
okay. Thank you.
All right. Oh, that was page 10.
Is there play structures on that?
Yes.
I was gonna add that should be an improvement in that.
Yeah, should be.
Oh, yeah, there's picnic tables and a fire pit and a double gym and lots of ground to run your dogs that don't need to be on leash. Wow. Okay, so it's time for a discussion. I need to hear, I'll bring up my thing, the policy 12, Gerhardt Parks Commission. I have no problem with there being a parks committee. Commission is a little stronger word, but I have no problem with there being a committee. I have no problems with policy number 13, looking to, explore things. Potential development, acquisitions, to explore that, if that's, what the plan would call for. I have, but number 12, does not make sense to me and does not sit well with me.
I agree.
And I second that comment.
I agree to some degree there, Virginia.
Okay.
But my thought too was that the council or the planning commission would have the ability to kind of set the bylaws and structure of this in the long run.
Right.
And so I think that can be shaped, later on at the discretion of the city council and
Right.
yeah, so I think there's obviously a lot of things that are concerning, but I think that can be worked out later on too. So.
I do too. I think that the plan can include into it the formation of a parks committee to help carry out these policies and to be aware, and when there need to be adjustments, that's what your committee does. So I don't have any problem with that, but they seem to be very specific in here and how much, what their duties will be in that. It's not really a city council sort of thing, Chad?
Yeah, I mean, anything that has to do with the budget, which it looks like this kind of commission would need, and I think even the establishment of a commission is laid out in the city council charter in how to do that.
Was this, Carol, was this reviewed by the city attorney?
No,
Okay. So that there's some wording probably would be changed, I'm assuming.
Yeah,
Based on that.
well, let me ask you that, Jenny and Austin,
Yeah.
are you saying that it would, if you replace the term Parks and Commission with City Parks Advisory Committee, is that what you're saying?
essentially, that's what I'm saying. I don't know if that's what Austin is saying, but essentially, that's what I'm saying.
To me, the title doesn't really matter as long as it's just we understand what the role is. And I think the original thought was it would be in a body that could help make decisions on the parks themselves. I don't think it was, there was the potential that there could be like a city staff person that like would be a parks manager or something like that, and they would, this commission would be able to work with that person to carry out the parks master plan. So I don't know, there's the structure I think has to be worked out and how it would all fit in, but the title, to me, doesn't really matter. I don't really care.
I think that the part of the title is the advisory, that it's advising. It is not, it says here, the new Deer Heart Parks Commission will be provided an appropriate level of funding from the city's commission and be empowered to accept other sources of funding and will hire and pay staff and contractors. That's something that's our staff and city council. There's city budget.
Yeah. We do the same thing here. Planning commission, Carol's our staff, and we can hire out anybody to do a more parks master plan or whatever, but.
We don't really do it. We let our staff and Carol.
I think that's the same thing that they're trying to say.
Okay,
So
it is what it says.
But it would seem the executive approach to the Parks Commission or advisory panel would seem to be from the advisory panel to a city council who handles all parks and recreation issues to the executive chair.
Yeah.
That way, the responsibility is left to an elected official for money spent and resources committed. And they would be responsible and answerable for what was done, advised by a group that we all approve of.
Yeah. There may be indeed, and I don't know about this, Jack, there's a city staff person that actually has responsibility for the parks. Is there, or is it done just by the city maintenance department?
It's a combination of things. And I think that, this piece in here is trying to force this or to move this plan forward and to have a body of people responsible for it. Currently, city staff maintains the parks in the status that they are in right now. And that, as over the years, has been what the city of Deer Heart wanted. There is a period of time to where we started talking many years ago about adding parks and adding more things to it. That then planning commission and the city council was no, because if we do that, we are inviting visitors and that sort of thing. So the parks have developed the way that they are because of that as well. Moving forward, I think that what the city was really waiting for was this parks master plan itself. This is a plan. And I think that with the planning commission and the city council monitoring what is in this plan, and then us filtering any changes that we do make to parks through it, I think you'll see an improvement in the parks, although with budget allowing, because there's a lot of items in here that are just gonna cost a lot of money. And then I think that it's changing in Deer People want to see some of these things now, whereas before they didn't. So it's here in the plan, and I think that, I don't know that there needs to be a commission to make sure that it happens. I think as a community, we're gonna move forward if this plan is adopted.
And as a volunteer, I did not want to show my face in public when I, or our organization here, our board here, is charged with spending money and committing to tasks. That's not what I volunteered to do. That's what the city council is charged to do. We should help them make the best decisions, help them get through to this document that is as complete and comprehensive as we can. And that's what we're doing now. So that's where I am in the whole thing.
So yeah, I think advisory committee would be probably more appropriate.
It's above our pay grade.
And making those, just making recommendations to the council.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
My comment on this, that has to do with when part of what you guys did here, you have on page 39, you have your long range goals where this is where you kind of put down commentary or bring information together from your survey. And basically it says leave it alone. Don't mess around with success. And so that there's several from 39 to 40, it goes on, love it like it is, da, da, da. So that's sort of my thinking about the parks is they're working, so don't mess with it. My other comment has to do with policy 15, vehicles on the beach. I think what I would do with that is I would take, and that's on page 19. The first paragraph, at the end of the first paragraph, where it says, however, the city will, I say, get rid of however. The city will read item number 1, end of story. Get rid of the rest of the verbiage.
Tell me where you are again.
Wait, I can't find however.
The last phrase on the first opening paragraph under policy 15 says language says, however, the city will not modify any existing city ordinance, regulation, or policy which prohibits or limits the use of vehicles in the dunes or on the beach in any way which would allow any use of vehicles in the dunes or on the beach that is not presently allowed.
I see.
It's the current policy. We're not changing it. The rest of the language is just taking up space on the page.
Sure.
Mean B, C, D, and E take out?
Yeah. What are they saying? They've already said what you want to say. The policy is you can't drive on the beach. We're maintaining the policy. You can't drive on the beach.
I think we're just trying to cover all our bases on this one.
Yes. I
broadcasting.
And I think someone else's base too.
Yeah, I mean, because technically we have no ability to do anything about that. So we were just gonna be saying, well, we will do the best we can to stop anything else, so. But
anyway, so those were cool things I found.
Okay, are you getting this, Carol?
Yes, and I guess I'll take this opportunity to ask you, am I at liberty to mess around with the notes? I mean, try them, pare them down, or leave them as they are and just put them in the appendix under notes?
I think we covered that, put them in the.
Yes, we all agreed to that.
Yeah.
Okay,
Move them, tear them down. They have a lot of important information, but we do want the policy to be such that someone can pick it up and they know what they can and what they can't do without having to dig.
but you don't want me to kind of mess around with redundancy in those notes, just leave them as they are.
Oh, no.
No, I say, if you see redundancy,
Okay,
it's
all
our enemy.
Yes.
right, thank you.
Okay.
Anything you can do to clarify those notes and condense them would be good.
Chad has a question. We're grown up, Chad.
Thank you. So under the notes, under policy 15, note 2 at the very end says, use of heavy equipment or tools and police fire personnel conducting non-emergency activities in the dunes should access the dunes on foot, leaving all vehicles on paved public right of way located east of the dunes. The only conflict that I see with that is our fire department does go out there and drill using for wildland grass fires. This would prevent that because it would be a non-emergency event, and so we wouldn't enable them to practice out there. And it is a very dynamic
It
situation.
could be described as a preparation for an emergency.
Correct, it is training. Yes.
Well, that's the only reason you're doing it is
I think
preparing.
Russ's idea is to get rid of pretty much all of this as it was. Because
You do that currently just on what, on a previous policy, or because it's historically
It's not
the
in the
way we
policy.
did it?
Historically. Yeah.
So, and I think that first little phrase, that first little A, just says, we're doing it the way we used to do it.
period.
And if you guys go down to the beach, just drive your.
There's nothing in the policy that says you can't do that.
Other than in the notes, it says.
Yeah, well, you can change, we can just change the notes, say for training purposes.
So I was wondering how people would react to the notes when they go back into the appendices, but some people do, and they'll be like, okay, well, this should have been in there. Why isn't it?"
Yeah.
You know,
Exactly.
it's just a little arduous.
Yeah,
Well, if we're gonna get hung, it's gonna be by a note in the appendix.
yeah. Guaranteed.
You know this, don't you?
Okay.
So
Vehicle.
what are you saying?
Well, I think that Russ's point is well taken.
Take it all out?
Less verbiage.
Yeah, get rid of everything but A.
A tells us that, you know,
Yeah, those aren't notes though, those are just.
Well, I know, but I'm saying you do A on policy 15,
get rid of.
and then you go to policy 16. You don't have any notes concerning policy 15. What's the point?
Yeah, we go back and forth on these notes so many times.
It's been several hours worth of work on those.
So what Russ is saying, 15A, that's the end of all that.
Got it.
right?
Yeah.
The notes, the thing, I mean, the city only takes vehicles down there when they need to. They're not running around down there. They're doing, they do some training. They have to do some things down there. So we don't certainly want them to stop doing that.
Right, and this is where the notes sometimes have some pretty strong language in them that become policy, and that's what I've been bothered by all along, but most of them are okay. But we'll take all these notes out on 15.
All right. What else?
I won't go into all the typos. I don't mean all the typos. I don't mean like there's a whole bunch of them like that. But I just had a couple of questions on page 30. The development of this master plan, Skylar Archibald. His first name is misspelled. SKYLER.
Well, it's spelled right the next word.
Right. And then on page 46, I guess I might just be a little confused. It has these little graphs, pie charts in here. And was there supposed to be one for Gearhart below?
36?
46.
I'm trying to catch up with you, Skylar or Skylar, there. Is it E or A? E.
It's E.
All right, now what's the next page, 40?
46. And was there supposed to be a pie chart under the Gearhart on the left side? I don't know if it was supposed to be there, or if I'm just not reading this right.
Yes.
I have that thing back.
Okay,
And also, this one is in right. Astoria is not readable.
correct.
Yeah, it's all kind of pasted, looks like.
Yeah, and cut and pasting need to be done over there.
Can you help me? Because I have some different, I have a different version of page numbers. Are you talking about the population growth or the?
They have, at the top of the page says poverty rate for population. Clatsop County and cities, it says figure 1.10. That's at the top of the page.
And below is
sorry.
2.1.
Well, and what Don's referring to, you have the page where there's the map with the Clatsop County and all the red dots for the cities. You looking at that?
Oh,
She's finding it.
I'm sorry, I got kind of a mixed up version here. Yeah. I don't have all the. Just give me the section number first. 7.
Okay, it's figure 2.1, where local residents work.
Oh,
There's-
2 point, this is not section 7, it's section 2.
No, this is at the back.
This is a graphic.
On page, it's our page 46. I don't know what page it is for you.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. But Chad, the staff here, Angela and Chad know what we're talking about.
All right, I'll talk to Chad. Just leave it at that.
Okay. Can we do that, Chad?
Works for us.
Okay, as long as we're looking at those, where did I see this? I couldn't hear, oh, I know. On your maps of city parks and trail on page 28 and 29.
Yes.
You have, up in the right-hand corner, you've got butterflies sitting up there.
I know. Is that the circle of the, where the,
No, it's the map of it's the maps of city parks and trail.
Yeah, I know about the butterfly. I saw that and our GIS guy put that there and I didn't know if that was that little circle of protected silver spotted butterfly or what that was.
Well, the butterfly reserve is down along the creek.
Yeah.
Not up there.
Is there a street named Butterfly?
No.
Okay. I was confused by that myself. All right.
That is actually the pathway out onto the beach. That's their private pathway.
Those are that wood, dock.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. That's what I did.
The boardwalk. Oh, God, is it?
Oh, really?
They shoot people. Not really. They got nasty letters that they catch. You know?
That is the name of a street.
Is it?
Yes, that is Butterfly Lane.
Yeah, Butterfly Lane.
But,
Oh, thank
okay.
you.
But it looks weird up there. Okay, then
All
I
right.
walked through there and never noticed the name because the street sign is gone. Okay,
That's it for me.
okay, Austin. Is there any, I know you brought up several things the last time.
Yeah,
Can we see the view?
policy number 8, 3.8,
3.8,
page 15. The title, Ridge Path to be restored and made usable. I feel like it gives the wrong impression, like it needs to be completely redone. So I was thinking Ridge Path to be maintained and usable or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
how about to be maintained,
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I said.
just without usable or anything else?
Take off the other two. Take off restored and made usable.
Ridge Path to be maintained.
Yeah.
Or we can put and usable, but or just maintained.
Well, I think usable is excessive. I don't.
Okay.
We could maintain it in an unusable state. Just give us a shot.
And again, when we're redundant about things, that gives opponents or others more opportunity to attack things. So the less said, the more defensive we can be about these policies.
By all means, by all means.
Um,
Anything else, Austin?
Hold on a second. Going back to policy 19. So this is to maintain the environmental integrity in all city-owned parks. We clarified that. the herbicide number 8, or policy number 19, section A. Pesticide, herbicide, and fungicides. I agree that no herbicide should be used when not necessary. The vinegar, you know, it would work on, you know, some minor weeds like, you know, dandelions and all that thing, something like that. But if you have noxious invasive weeds like knotweed, yellow flag iris, purple loosestrife, those are specific things that you need to use herbicides on. They can be selectively applied and with licensed herbicide applicant. So I feel like you're pigeonholing ourselves. If we get a situation where something like that shows up, we want to address it. So that was one of them.
How would you say that?
Should any herbicide be needed? Only a licensed applicator would be able to use, would be able to treat those weeds. And any areas of that should be flagged, so you'd be able to notify the public, put up signs, be this area has been treated, stay away from it. So,
Okay. What bothers me is the wording here, is the city will not apply any pesticide, herbicide, fungicide to these areas. And then should a herbicide be needed, or either will not, or you will.
Right. Trying to think of.
Will only apply as needed.
Apply to specific, I guess we'd have to make a noxious weed list that would be specific to that, but we could do that.
Yeah, that's a definable way to do it.
Okay.
Is there an organization that does this already? Is it Clatsop County?
Soil Water Conservation District, they would be ones, I guess you would be your contact, Oregon Department of Agriculture too.
Extension service.
Yes, the extension service, yeah.
Well, a point of education, I think dandelions are B positive and dandelions are also edible.
Yeah. I mean,
And we want to wipe them out.
actually, so is knotweed, which is the bad one, you can make a pie out of it.
No kidding.
Okay, guys.
There's a whole recipe
That
list.
sounds
of
very
uses.
nice. No kidding.
All right, we're now going out
Okay.
to look at noxious weeds.
And then,
Okay, can I chime in here, please?
Yes, just wait a minute, Austin, when Austin finishes, then, well, I'll go to you next, Sharon.
Okay, thank you.
Then number D says any landscaping other than grass, seed, turf installation will be done with native plants. Trees will be added wherever possible with new landscape. I guess I'm nitpicking, I was like wherever appropriate with new landscaping. And then annual flowers.
So what are you wanting it to say?
I got appropriate.
Wherever appropriate. And then annual flowers is a core to use, so I would say that should be subject to more of the urban park areas, not any of the natural park areas such as along the estuary and dunes.
Okay,
So that's
That's a
also
good point.
Yeah.
I like that.
okay, you have that, Carol?
Yep.
Okay, anything else, Austin?
Let me check. Oh, there was a list of the funding sources, Carol. I know
Yeah.
I put out a bunch of those the last meeting. And I think most of them, they are in here.
I think they're all there.
Yeah, I was confused because in the land trust section, it doesn't list the land trust you have as in a nonprofit organization, so that was a little bit confusing. So you have all the land trusts that listed in the nonprofit area, but then on the land trust section, you have just another random list of land trusts.
Admittedly, I copied another plan.
Yeah, see that first line says Carlton area. So.
Whoops.
So the Weather Conservancy works, Land Trust Alliance works, and Coalition of Oregon Land Trust works, and the Trust for Public Land works, but Northwest Land Conservation Trust, I've never even heard of them, so. I think I'm not sure they would fit in.
Okay. I think I got them all.
Yeah.
Where's Carlton? What page?
That's on that land trust, it's right underneath land trust.
Oh,
Sorry,
oh
page.
yeah, sorry. Sorry,
Yeah, page 60.
got it.
I think that's
Okay.
it.
Okay, all right, thank you, Austin. Sharon, you would like to speak?
Thank you. I would like to go back to policy number 3 on page 13. And I understand the Little Beach homeowners' concerns about being dictated about what can happen on their private property. I absolutely understand that. But I think that Stephanie's suggestion to take out that along the Mechanicsum River estuary in the first sentence does not need to happen, because the first sentence says the city will manage all city-owned property. It doesn't say anything about private property in that first sentence. So I think that Mechanicsum River estuary can stay in there, since it's only talking about the city-owned property fronted along the Mechanicsum River estuary. It's not talking about private property. Does that make sense?
I agree, Sharon.
Are you on policy 3? I was just still back on the land trust.
Yeah.
So we're back on 3.
Okay. What will resist any effort by any other public and private property owner to develop any property not owned by the city? Is that what you mean?
No, I'm talking about, Carol, I'm talking about the first sentence.
Oh, yeah.
And
Right.
Stephanie suggested in that first sentence, we take out, quote, along the Mechanicsum River estuary.
Right.
She said she would like that removed.
Right.
And I am saying that first sentence is only talking about city-owned property.
That's
It's
right.
saying-
That is right.
So it doesn't
Okay.
need to be removed. We're not talking about private property. along the Mechanicsum River estuary.
Maybe it shouldn't
Okay.
say and.
Yeah.
Correct.
You just don't separate it from that in any way.
You could do it that way.
Well.
I think the and was trying to separate out the dunes from
Yeah.
the
Yeah,
river.
From the river, yeah.
Yeah.
All I'm saying is that sentence already says city-owned property. It doesn't say anything about private property.
But
Yeah, that's the definer, city-owned property. Correct.
Okay, what do we do about the second sentence?
Well, I think it's important to have the located west of the oceanfront building line, because there is private property in the dunes.
Right.
Right.
That should be kept. It's just really comes down to the shoreline mechanism that that Stephanie and Jeff.
Okay, so we've got private property in that sentence, and we've got along the shoreline of the Mechanicsum River estuary.
Right.
But, you know, I think that kind of relates to what Strange was talking about earlier. Now we got a parks plan that's talking about, you know, what is zoning, and, I mean, if we're making commentary about any public or private property, we're putting something in that's not part of what we're talking about. I mean, there's other codes and zoning that
Yeah,
should address that.
The A2 zone. So are you saying it should stop at that last sentence at section 3.1220.2? As Stephanie said, and take out the very last part or along the shoreline of the Nicanagon River estuary.
Well,
I think
yeah,
that's
I'm
fine.
saying just leave
I
the
think that would be
first
fine.
sentence in.
Hold it, can't hear
Go
both of
ahead,
you.
Sharon, I'm sorry.
I think
Sharon,
that would be fine. I
Would
think
that be
would
okay?
fine to put. Yeah, but I'm saying the first sentence should not be changed.
Right, and maybe I'll take out and, just to connect it really more directly.
Okay,
No, I think you need and, because
Yeah, because
it doesn't describe it properly without and.
Oh, within the dunes west of Ocean Ave, and, okay, leave it in there. You're right, that does have to be
And
there.
that's the end of it, that one sentence
Yeah,
is all you need.
so are you saying in the second sentence, starting also and all the way through, are you saying eliminate that
Yeah,
sentence entirely?
well, because it's not pertinent to what we're talking about. We're talking about a parks plan, and that's suggesting, let's start watching over public or private land and what people do on private land. That's what zoning does, and that's what other parts of our, masses of paperwork.
does that building line, does that
Yeah.
have restriction on it?
Yeah, okay, so the oceanfront building line, also known as, I think, the Palmer line, is 1970 something, setting that, the developable area forward of that is non-existent. You just can't build anything, not a fence, no structure, nothing like that. So that's already existing. It is Oregon law, and it is something that we adhere to very closely out there. Exceptions can be had, for the water wells or for the greater good, but that's about it. There is a section of, I remember something coming up once where a person that owned a piece of property that went all the way out to the ocean just thought maybe they might just plant a lawn instead of the beach grasses that were out there. And I don't recall anything in there that would prevent that. As far as the oceanfront building line, I'll have to do some more research into it, but I think that was maybe what they were trying to partially do here.
yeah.
But,
So that whole, like Taylor, like Russ just said, that rest of those sentences don't really even mean anything.
except for maybe if they wanted to plant their own lawn out there. I don't have anything to
It's not.
prevent it.
But it just says undeveloped state, so it's not.
Yeah.
True.
And like I said earlier, the less we have in here, the less things
Yeah.
people can pick apart.
Okay.
So Carol,
So-
am I right in consensus to eliminate the second sentence in that section, and it would do what we would like to do?
I agree.
And Austin, or you're thinking, I,
Second and third.
second, okay, it looked like it was all one sentence there,
Oh, it is, that's right.
okay.
Eliminate this, let me confirm, I'm the editor here. Eliminate that whole second sentence starting with also,
Yeah,
Correct.
okay?
And
Does-
then no one will go to the appendix.
Yeah. All notes will go to the appendix.
yeah, I think that. I think that will hopefully take care of the issues with the homeowners down the Little Beach. I don't know, but at least I think that'll take care of the issue there. All right, Do we
okay,
have-
can I,
yes, go ahead, Sharon, go ahead.
sorry, I wasn't done. Policy number 4,
Yes,
I need to go on record saying this. Letter C, preservation of scenic views. I have no problems whatsoever with that wording. I do have a problem with the city agreeing to help maintain ocean and beach views. Because I don't think in all practicality that the city can agree to do that. And I also don't think that a lot of the taxpayers in the city would be very happy about using their taxes to help preserve ocean and beach views for a handful of people. I'm just going to go on record saying that. I think that wording should be taken out of there.
C,
Yep.
I disagree. This is Terry. I don't think that wording should be taken out if you want to put something in that says the city doesn't have to pay for it. But I think preservation of scenic views is important. And if it's on,
I don't,
okay, I'm talking and then you talk. And if it's on city property, then the city should pay for it to be done because it's their property. It's on private property, then the private property owner should pay for it. So I disagree that that should be taken out.
okay, I don't have any, as I said, I don't have any problem with the wording preservation of scenic views. That's the wording in the comprehensive plan, and that's the wording in the newest beaches and dunes overlay zone ordinance that we adopted. There is nowhere in the comprehensive plan or the beaches and dunes newest ordinance where it talks about the city helping preserve ocean views.
Doesn't say that the city's gonna pay for this. It just says it will manage.
Well, if it's on city-owned property, they're gonna pay for it. If they're managing vegetation on city-owned property.
So, yeah, I see two different things here. So
Yeah.
I can't think of a time where the city has ever paid to have somebody's view maintained, even on city park property. Where what the city does is if there's trimming that's able to be done, the individual homeowner or a group of homeowners pays for that. And based on our ordinance, we allow them or we don't allow them to do it. The only
Okay,
place that we will be interested in maintaining views is such as the park. Leslie Miller, that is owned by the city, and there are times where we'll pay to have those trees taken care of so that the view does remain from that park.
Mhm. Oh, okay.
Well, why don't we do what we've been doing so far, simplify it, and just use the first, on the first line, policy number 4, when you get to city zoning ordinance section 3.1240D, period. Get rid of A through G. We're gonna manage the vegetation on the property. Why do we have to open ourselves up to preserving views and this and that and the other thing? I don't know what zoning ordinance 3.1240 says, if this just has to do with 50% cutting, or if it's, the mowing thing we talked about in the past, but.
Yeah, I can't go along with that, but I'm just one vote.
Chad, does the city now, okay, it says, this policy is in there, so the city, telling the city that they will manage vegetation on city-owned property within the dunes and along the Mechanical River estuary. And it's been giving you, what, 10, 8 point something like that, that you're going to do. Is this is a plan, so it seems to me like we're trying to give you some direction. Russ is saying, we don't need to be so specific.
Well,
I mean,
if Chad's saying that we haven't cut anything down in the parks to maintain the view in the past, why are we putting something in there that says that we should maintain the view?
I think that the letters A through G are talking about the spirit of the reasons for some of the vegetation management, which does include allowing for some views to be maintained. And it does include noxious weeds and dead and diseased vegetation for fear of somebody looking at, I mean, you could take it out. But I think that the part of the vegetation group, they wanted to make a point to where some views are okay, or to maintain those. And shoreline stabilization and tsunami buffering may be necessary. So I think that just gives the spirit of what they're talking about as far as vegetation and dune management to include those things.
I think if you had a bench and that was a viewpoint there, and all of a sudden it was, you couldn't see anything.
Right, right,
You have the ability to do that.
okay,
But it's a balancing act too. This is why the advisory committee comes in and be like, hey, maybe we shouldn't be cutting trees right here for this view.
it's going to be adjusted.
It's good, yeah.
Okay, all right, what else, Sharon?
Okay, to address Austin's concern, policy number 19 on page 22. My concerns about the pesticide, herbicide, fungicide application is not only for the people who use the parks, but for the dogs that use the parks. And I will give you a specific example. I was walking by the plantings that surround the tennis courts one day, and a maintenance, not our city maintenance guy, but a hired maintenance landscape company guy was spraying something in those plantings. And I stopped and asked him, and he goes, oh yeah, it's Roundup. And I know for a fact that a lot of dogs go in among those plantings. And so my concern at that time was, well, this guy just sprayed Roundup all over these plantings, and somebody's dog is going to run in there, you know, in the next half hour, not knowing that he just sprayed. So my concerns, Austin, with all of that is not only for the people that are using the parks, being exposed to that, and pesticide drift when it's sprayed, but also the dogs that are going in and out of all these areas in the parks. So that's why I put that in there. I have a problem with pesticides being sprayed around.
I agree, Sharon, that's a big concern, and I don't think anybody in the city would want to have pesticides where they weren't necessary. There's a lot of weed control and plant maintenance and lawn maintenance that can be done without it. I was just wanting to make sure that we didn't pigeonhole ourselves and not be able to address something that can become a concern later on, such as like knotweed or yellow flag iris that just shows up. And we don't have the ability to treat it, and it spreads wild. So I totally agree with you. I think a licensed herbicide pest or licensed applicator should always be used anytime we're using public money, and especially in the parks. So I hope that gets put in there as well. So.
And it also says at the end, any area treated as such will be flagged. Now, I guess dogs don't read flags, but
yeah,
hopefully the owners do.
Most good applicators use a public sign that they place outside the boundary. So at least people are aware that it's being used. So
Most licensed applicators.
That's what I mean.
Especially unlicensed, not gonna be as, right?
We do have back on policy 3.4, point F, removal and control of noxious weeds. And then we come to 3.19, and we say there can be none. I'm going, there's a conflict there. So,
which one?
okay, back on 3.4, we had the list of things that they were going to do. Your point F, removal and control of noxious weeds is one of the things that we're saying the city needs to be doing. You're saying, and I agree with you, Austin.
3.4, sorry.
3.4, we just talked about
3.4,
vegetation and the dunes to be managed.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so we're saying removal and control of noxious weeds. And you're saying, yes, if we need to do it. So I agree with you is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we're going to have a conflict here.
Right. Yeah, no, there's a time and a place to use herbicides, and that's this just a specific line says we just can't use them at all.
That's right.
So
and that doesn't.
Yeah, that's what we're trying to address.
Yes. No, I think we all agree we don't want to have a conflict with it. What else, Sharon?
That's it. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Carrie?
Yeah, I keep coming back to policy 19 as, and B, and it's maintain environmental integrity of city-owned parks. And then you look at B, trimming and pruning will be limited to hazardous subsection limbs, so and so, no more than 1/4 of a limb growth every 3 years. Some of those trees grow 2 feet in a year. Why would you have such restrictive language? And then the next sentence makes no sense. The only to allow paths to remain passable. What does that sentence mean?
I think that should have been spelled with an N on the end.
And only to allow paths, yeah.
Or then.
And what, how are you rewriting it to what?
After every 3 years, delete the period and change the next word, change to and only to allow paths to remain passable.
Okay, I missed that. No, that would be fine.
That's what was there. Back to Chad here. We have ordinance in the city about sizes of trees and all of that already, don't we?
2, yes.
Okay, so we know that 6-inch diameter, is that at the base?
Well, that's measured 4.5 feet up. It's called mean breast height.
No,
And that isn't, as it relates to the trees in the dunes.
Okay,
In the city, it's 12 inches in diameter at 4.5 feet. That can be, 12 inches cannot be removed. Anything under 12 inches can. Up to 5 trees per year. So there are 2 places already that is.
so is this in conflict to that?
So.
Well, Chad makes a decision anyway, so.
There's no need to give someone.
Yeah, the
Well,
city's 12
is
inch
there a-
diameter.
Is there a place where your policy is described? I mean, in some other ordinance, Chad?
That's what I was asking,
Well,
was it tree ordinance?
Here it kind of says trimming and pruning will be limited to hazardous and obstructive limbs. I.e. line of sight for traffic and window painting no more than. So it's a little arduous. Can we do some trimming for views? Can we allow people to trim for views? I'm not sure.
Yeah, they're not in sync, and it will be confusing which one prevails.
And then advised by an arborist is all right. There are some things that are obvious, but then, what it's saying here is not using that same arborist who says the tree is dead and allow them to cut it down. Is limiting because there's some thought that these arborists are just, willy-nilly allowing things to be cut down, which I haven't really seen, but I can understand the premise. The other thing is the 1/4 of a limb growth every 3 years. I can see that we probably have to name every tree out there somehow, whether that be with a number plate, GPS or something like that to really track that program. But
I tried counting them all one time.
you did try to count them as well. I remember that. So
Why couldn't you just? This is Terry. Why couldn't you just say as necessary? And
I think that the
take out
wording.
no more than 1/2 or 1/4 limb of growth every 3 years.
I think what has to happen, Terry, is that this has to agree with the current city ordinance. We can't have, it becomes too confusing.
Why
We
not?
have 2 different,
I think one of the reasons that they, so we have the ability to top a tree not more than 30% that is a pine. It's vertical trimming is the term that they use.
right?
But there was no time limit put into that. And that could be, every year. And so soon you're getting down to a pretty short tree. And that is possible if the city, and this is on city property, if the city allowed permits year by year to vertically trim these trees, they'd be non-existent after a period of time. There is ways to track these things. We require maps for any trimming that's going on the beach, and we kind of list it so that we could go back and say, okay, a year ago, we already trimmed these trees, so no. But I think that being very specific this way might have some problems at the moment.
Well, why don't we, since this is city-owned public parks, it's talking about city-owned trees. The trees will will be maintained as is wherever possible according to city ordinance. Rest of it goes away.
Just cross-reference to the ordinance of vegetation.
According to city ordinance XYZ.
The city ordinance that's specific to the trees is only in the beaches and dunes overlay zone. It doesn't include the rest of the city-owned property.
Includes everything.
And the reason that I put in there base of the tree instead of 4.5 feet up is because we had a lot of problems with understanding which trees were cut that should have not been cut, because you can see how big it is at the base, but you can't see once the tree is cut, you can't see what the tree was at 4.5 feet up. So
That's where there's some trust there, yeah.
So is that tree is only related to the overlay zone?
Well, the trees that are 6 inches, that reference to not removing any tree that's over 6 inches in diameter is on the overlay zone. And at 4.5 feet breast height, the tree is this big, but I can tell you that a 2-inch tree, a 3-inch tree can have a stump this big.
Yeah.
So that would be very much more restrictive to removing a lot of the trees that were before deemed okay to remove. I think is what that.
That's the only certain way to be able to ascertain what's happened.
And it would be preventative. It would stop a lot of the tree removal.
But these are our trees, right? There's not private trees we're talking about.
Correct.
So then if you and McFadden say, let's not cut them, you're not gonna cut them. I mean, we're trying to prevent our own people from doing something onerous.
Right. I think, is Sharon referring to what happened right there, Wellington, right there, at the access to the beach access?
Well, that's private property, and that's not it wasn't in the A2 aquatic zone. And there was maybe one tree that was on public property within that bunch. It's hard to exactly say without, but it was close. I think that this is, again, to do too much pruning to a tree in order to kill it or to make it, eventually remove it is the concern as well. And then, Sharon's point of, how do you tell whether or not a tree is, to be removed or not? We have come up with a scheme to where we paint some things and we do that. And I do pre and post and during walkthroughs with most every permit we go through. And we have potentially had some trees that were removed that shouldn't have been, but not in a great number at all. It was here and there, but if you go to that stump thing, I mean, the smallest of trees has the biggest stump at ground level, so it would prevent probably 90% of all trees being cut out there. And I think that, there should be a policy that does show, how often these trees can be cut, but I don't know if it belongs in the Parks Master Plan or if it belongs in the vegetation ordinance.
Yeah.
And if we cross-reference things, if we put a portion in here and a portion in there, it's going to be very difficult for future planning commission, city administrators and tree cutters to figure that out. But if we have a problem with the way that the trees are being maintained, then I think the vegetation ordinance that includes the overlay zone or the tree ordinance that talks about what happens in town would be the place to make those changes.
Less duplication.
I would like to disagree with that. I think that a large part of what the parks plan should have to do with is the vegetation in the parks. That just goes without saying. So I understand that this contradicts some other ordinance wording, but this is for overall parks. This isn't just for the beaches and dunes overlay. And if we don't have an overall parks plan, which I thought that's what this was. So anyway, Carol, you left out, the reason that sentence doesn't work is because you left out a line. So the line says, you know, it ends that 1/4 of the limb growth every 3 years. Then the next sentence is the city will not allow any top-down cutting. Then the next sentence is bushes and thickets will remain to be trimmed back only to allow paths to remain passable.
I knew something was wrong there. Okay, there was a lot of cut and paste. Sharon, can you put that in an email for me? I got the first part of what you said, but.
So the only thing concerning is that each park is different, and so each use is gonna be different, and how we maintain the park is gonna be different. So,
And that in the process through the vegetation removal, it was a very involved process, and part of it was to be able to remove some of these things. The city will not allow any top-down cutting is in direct conflict with the current vegetation ordinance. So this would dictate that we change that ordinance, I suppose.
And that went directly to the city council. It didn't go through us.
Correct, there was
Yeah.
people involved, though, sure.
Right, but it didn't go through the planning commission. Okay, so if, Terry, did you have anything else besides what you? Anything else, Terry? Terry?
Carrie nodded off.
he's gone.
Oh, okay,
It looks like we may have lost him.
okay.
It's after his bedtime.
It's after all our bedtime, let's face it. Except for Don and Austin, who have a younger.
Not done, not done.
And you know, later comes a lot earlier, you know. older
That's
you
what I'm
get.
figuring. You got one of the first, the toughest ones are your first.
All right,
Folks, jump right into it.
so we've given you some things, Carol, that I do not look at us that way, I can see you. That we need to either have reworded or eliminated. We know that you worked on this, we know Chad's worked on it, we know a lot of people have worked on it. We want to move this to someplace where it can be, then move on to the city council.
Yeah, I feel pretty comfortable with all the things you said, assuming I get them all right, except for this tree one. I don't know what to do with that.
Yeah, I think we need to go back to the original ordinance and just leave it at that for now. I think that the Parks Committee or either your committee can make some of these decisions on tree removal if it's necessary in the city parks.
Let's just leave it all up to the city manager.
I'm on that.
The next city manager may not go hiking out there looking at things.
That'll be after our lifetime.
That's right, oh, that's a job requirement. So I'm looking for direction. Do I call for a motion at this point, Carol, or do we continue the public hearing? What is your advice, please?
Well, I think, you,
Well, this is Terry. Before I vote on anything, I want to see how all this is going to be reworded by Carol. I want to see the next draft of the document.
Yes,
Okay.
that'll be the January meeting.
Okay, that's the question I'm asking, because Carol we have a timeline. We have this timeline that we still need to get to city council and get approved. So, Carol, then what we need is a motion to continue this part of the public hearing to see,
the next draft. And are you,
next draft.
I think you closed the public portion of the hearing.
I closed the public part, yes.
Yes, okay, so the motion is for staff to bring back the revisions as discussed tonight for one final look in January.
All right.
Yes.
Would someone like to make that motion?
I second.
So moved.
Terry has moved what Carol just said, and Russ has seconded it. Do we understand that we will be looking at a rewritten, updated draft for approval January 13th? All those, any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say no. All right, so January 13th, Carol, when you get back from your trip, you can bring us something wonderful. Okay,
Can I, one more thing, just clarity, can I assume, I think I can assume I'm restricting it to these, everything but the appendix, right? Except for that one chart, yes.
the chart that seems to be missing pieces, we're sure it's there, it just is missing pieces. And
It seems like there were several pie charts missing from that. graph.
Yeah, we'll take a look at cleaning those up.
Yeah.
We made a note of that over here. I saw a few other things as well.
Yeah.
And then Ginny pointed out another blur that was on there, so.
We're like, where'd that come from? Okay, we don't have any other unfinished business, we have no new business. Do we have any concerns of the commission? I hear none. Any questions for the land use attorney? They're not here. It is 8:40. Meeting is adjourned.
Thanks, everybody.
Yeah.
Okay, Carol, we'll talk soon. Thank you very much.
Yeah, they all right.
No, wait,
Thank you, Carol.
wait till the Portland attorneys.
Thank you all.